So I went to Sicily for the first time in 2006. I had to interview quite a few people, from Gianfranco Soldera to Marisa Cuomo and Silvia Imparato from Montevetrano, and then Salvo Foti and Benanti. I had the chance to stay for 12 days in Salvo Foti's house. But yesterday I was giving the key back to him. We were in the only bar that is in Passopisciaro. We were having a granita and just saying goodbye to Salvo when the butcher of the place came in and asked Salvo help about taking off a very old vineyard next to Salvo's. And this is how it started.
Fascinating people with stories to share, fabulous wines and the best local foods to accompany them, and beautiful places to discover and visit. All of this and more on Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on the Italian Wine Podcast. Join me for a new episode every Tuesday. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Today we travel to Sicily, to the northern slopes of Mount Etna, to meet my guest, Federico Graziani of the Feudo di Graziani winery. Buongiorno, Fede. Many thanks for being my guest today. How are you, and is it hot on the volcano?
Buongiorno, Marc. It's a pleasure to be here, and yes, it is definitely warm in the volcano. Actually, it's probably hotter on the northern, as you might heard. France, Germany, and northern Italy today are hotter than Sicily, especially because we are high on the mountain.
Yeah, I can imagine. In fact, we've been roasting in England as well, in southern England. I'm in the southwest, and for us, there have been record temperatures. It's never been hotter since records began, so we're struggling to sleep. It's in the 30s, not the 40s, but it's hot enough for us. I guess, Fede, being high on the volcano with vineyards at altitude, this climate change that the world is experiencing, that all of Europe is feeling right now, this is one of the advantages you have of where you are. Is that right?
Absolutely right. If you think we are, my vineyard are between 600 and 1,200 meters above the sea level. So it's a very high altitude for vineyard, probably the highest we have, or some of the highest we have in Europe. And it's very important for this climate change that we are on a mountain. We can actually go upper and upper as we need. Of course, we plant vineyard which last 20, 30, 40 years. But if you consider, for example, today, the last couple of years, I planted some Caricante at 1,200 meters where Caricante has never been. So I think this is quite important. If you think of Barolo, they are already on the top of the hills. Where can they go? We have the chance in a few cases of moving up. And this is a good perspective for the future because everything is changing so fast.
Yeah, that's incredible that you can just continue to plant higher. Did you say 1,200 meters for Caricante?
Yes, actually, this is the vineyard where we started experimenting the cold climate variety. So we have mainly Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Chenin Blanc in that vineyard, a little bit of Grecanico, and since 4 years, I started to consider the Caricante even at that altitude, even if in history we never had Caricante at that altitude because
that's
simply
incredible.
It couldn't ripe. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Federico, just to give our listeners who are located all around the world more of a precise image of Etna and its different versante, the different exposures, the slopes. Can you describe where you are and just describe something of the environment so we can have a picture in our minds of where you are?
Yes. Starting from far, we are in Italy. Even if we are closer to Africa than we are to Milan, for example, we are in Sicily, but Etna is called an island inside the island because we are on the central eastern side of the island. And just because it's such a high mountain, it's 3,405 meters. It's the highest and most active volcano in Europe. So going to the volcano a little bit inside, we have the DOC, which is a sort of reverse sea, which embrace the volcano between, I would say, 400 and 800 meters above the sea level, in a sort of neck which goes northern, where I would say probably 80% of the winery are. Is probably an area most famous for red wine, and the wines are the grapes, the climate, because we are protected by the southern wind, the very hot wind, Africans, and we are protected from the north by the neighboring mountains. So it's a quite unique area for wine. The eastern side is where mainly white wine are. White grapes are grown. It's a very, very wet area. The rainfall compared to the northern slope is probably 50% more. So if we have like 1,000 millimeters per year in the eastern side, which is the one who facing the sea, because of the breeze and everything, we usually have 1,300, 1,500 millimeters per year. The southern slope, it's not very, there are not many winery. It's quite a warm area. You can have either white or red, usually are a little bit more powerful and probably a little less elegant than the northern and the eastern slope for the white. But yes, we are northern, right in the middle of the north. We go a little bit farther with the white wine. We were talking about the vineyard 1,200 meters, which is just after Randazzo, so it's starting to be in the Bronte Common, which is northwest.
Okay, that's a really good description for our listeners. This inverted sea, this backwards sea. So Etna, I think it's important for our listeners to understand that Etna is a large wine denomination with very, very different terroir within it, different regions almost within this one larger wine region. And of course, that leads, that's why it's been divided into the Contrade, which we can also talk about
Yes,
a little bit further on. But it's very important too, because the as you say, the exposures are so different. That eastern side facing the Ionian Sea, the fresh breezes coming off the sea, helping to promote those exciting white wines that come from the east, and then of course the elegance of the northern slopes. Fede, you're not actually from Etna or even from Sicily, are you? Can you perhaps tell us a little bit about your own background, how you came to be growing grapes and making wine on a volcano, but also, I guess, how you first fell in love with wine and entered into the world of wine, because you're not from a winemaking family, is that right?
it is correct. It's a very long story, so take a seat. I started many years ago. I was doing hotellerie school in Ravenna, which is on the eastern coast, just below Venice, on the Adriatic Sea. It's a small town and not many wines or good restaurants there. So after my study, and I started 15 when I did the first course of sommelier, and then I just got really passionate about it and about the people and the magic terroir that are all around the world. And so my study brought me to work in some of the best restaurants in Italy and in London. So I've been in the some business for about 22 years. And in my last work, which was in Milan when I was already 30, 29, I started to study at university winemaking and viticulture. There is a great professor, there used to be a great professor in University Milan called Attilio Scienza, which is one of the greatest viticulture professor in the world. So I decided to do this this course because of him. Actually, I've been, yes, also very long ago. I mean, 1998, I've been awarded as Best Italian Sommelier. So I'm always been in the wine business, I would say. It's just since 2006, which I discovered the first wine of Etna really surprised me because I had a couple and they were not representing what the future could have been. So after tasting this wine, I decided to go and to discover the wine region as I did many, many times in probably 4 continents. So that was my job, was to investigate and to understand the places more than just drinking the bottles. So I went to Sicily for the first time in 2006. I met 3 or 4 of the most important producers we had at that time, which were Marco De Grazia from Terre Nere, Andrea Franchetti from Passopisciaro, and then Salvo Foti and Benanti. So after this trip, I really understood a little bit more of Etna, and it was like just 2 years later when I needed to publish a book because at that time I was writing with a friend, a journalist in Parma. We were publishing a few books about wine, and I had to finish a book in 3 weeks because that was my holiday. I couldn't do much more than half a book during my working time. So
That's
I
pretty
called.
good. Half a book in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I was really.
It takes me 3 years.
I mean, yes, we were two, and so we help each other. And he knew I was working a lot, and so yes. But those 3 weeks, which were my holiday, so I started with my car in Milan, and I had to interview quite a few people. So from Gianfranco Soldera to Marisa Cuomo and Silvia Imparato from Montevetrano, and then Salvo Foti and Benanti. So they were the interview I had to do. And so driving my car from north to south of Italy, we managed to do all the interview. And then I had the chance to stay for 12 days in Salvo Foti's house. And it was very profuse because the wine book at the end is quite nice. But just the day I was giving the key back to him, we were in the only bar that is in Passopisciaro, and we were having a granita and just saying goodbye to Salvo when the butcher of the place came in and asked Salvo help about taking off a very old vineyard next to Salvo's. And this is how it started. I mean, I decided to have a look of the vineyard before it was taken off because European community used to give money in order to have less vineyard. And yes, you shouldn't do it for 100 years old vineyard. But at that time, there was no problem about that.
This is an incredible story, Fede. So you were finishing the book, you were having
Yeah,
a granita with Salvo, and the butcher of Passopisciaro walked in to the bar
exactly.
and said he was going to take the vines out, and that sparked your interest. You did the thought of, and I imagine Salvo would have been horrified to think of Piedifranco vines on Etna being taken out. Is that right?
It is correct. I mean, I told Salvatore means saver in Italian. So I said, Salvo, your name, you cannot say no to me. Help me to save this vineyard. And he couldn't say no. And it was like just a little start because it was less than half an hectare, a little bit less than half an hectare. So actually, my first vintage on the market is 2010 because I didn't know you buy the vineyard, but you don't buy the grape because the butcher has been working in that vineyard for like 7-8 months. When I bought it was August. So he kept all the grapes and I was really disappointed. But, you start to know and to understand which quality, like patience, it's probably in the wine business, probably one of the most important quality.
Was the butcher making wines in the old style in the Palmento? Was it mainly for his own use or to sell to customers
Yes.
in the macelleria?
No, it was just for him. I mean, there were like three different plots, and this one was the nicest, but the farther from their house. And he and his brothers decided to keep the one closer to the house and to sell the one which was a little bit smaller, but a bit farther from their house. So yes, it's just a small football field. But it's really precious for me because it's where I started my first vintage in 2010.
You returned back to the north of Italy then to continue working. You didn't dedicate yourself full time to the winery for some years. Is that right?
I mean, yes, it's correct. I mean, you cannot live on. I mean, I cannot. Probably there are people who can, but I didn't have the chance. I was working. I was still working as a sommelier in one of the best restaurants in Italy. I didn't understand how much this could have been my life at that stage. So it started as a hobby, and after a couple of years, I realized that the wine we were producing they had a great potential. I think today they are better than 15 years ago, but it has been very important for me to keep working, to keep understanding the wines as we are doing.
Okay. And so, was Salvo then a great influence to you and a great help in the start of the project? And is part of Salvo's philosophy at I Vigneri that is essential to what you're doing today?
I think Salvo, when I made the first trip to Sicily with Salvo Foti, I was very close in the idea of the ethical or how to handle a vineyard using the right people, right understanding not just the single vineyard but all the context. And this for me has been very important. And without Salvo, probably I wouldn't have started it because, as I said, I was still working in another restaurant and I couldn't do it without him. And today I'm very glad which the wine says my style, which is probably a sommelier style more than Sicilian native producer, and but was essential and is still essential the fact that with Vinieri we share workers on the vineyard which has an experience which I will never have because the head of the workers is 59, Maurizio Pagano, and he spent 49 years in the vineyard. So I cannot have his experience even probably when I'll be 80. So sometimes you just have to understand there are people, they understand things more than you do. And to have them with you, it's a great help to produce a good wine.
Okay, so you bought this small parcel and now have further vineyards as well. We'll discuss those locations in a minute, but what did you find when you took on the vineyard? Because it must have been something of a dream for a sommelier, a great sommelier in a top restaurant, to actually be producing wines that could one day be on those same wine lists of the great restaurants. What were the main challenges you found, though, the day to day of growing grapes from old vines, ancient vines, 100-year-old vines located on a volcano?
It's really a challenge because you have to learn first of all. I mean, it's something new. You have good friends and very expertise people around, and this is very important. But you have to define your style as well. So I'm lucky because I have the chance of being. I mean, I tasted all the best wine in the world. When you work in 2, 3 Michelin star restaurant, you had. I don't know today because yeah, probably, but it's more and more difficult. It's more possible to drink to taste them, but it's very difficult to drink them. Just 15 years ago, I was like reading when I was, it's in 2000. I was working in a restaurant in London, and it was called Isola. So per coincidence. And I just received the wine list. I was looking for it for so long because I remember we had a special wine by the glass, and it was like Salon 88, which is a wine that today it would be, I don't know, impossible for me to buy. And maybe I don't know. It's really a great vintage, one of the greatest. And we had like a 19 pounds on the list by the glass. It's something that recall how much everything changed. And this is important because what I had the chance to taste and to drink, it's probably what today is my model of wine, and it's very important for me to keep it in mind because I don't want to produce wine simply reflecting a terroir. I want to propose the best wine I can from a terroir, and I'm close to Salvo, and I'm close to some of the Barolo producers which were of inspiration for me, like Giuseppe Rinaldi, Maria Teresa Mascarello. I'm always been fascinated by their way of understanding the vineyard and not only the vineyard, the context, the winery, and the humanity they bring with them.
Okay. Well, I think it is fascinating that you've come into the world of making wine from being such a high level sommelier and being acquainted with the greatest wines from all over the world with different styles of wine, different grape varieties, the best wines, the most expensive wines. And you're able to form a taste that you can then try to express from the grapes that you grow on the volcano. Let's have a look at some of your wines, and you can talk us through what you're doing with them. Starting perhaps with Mareneve, this iconic white wine that you produce. Where does that
Yes,
come from?
that's the highest vineyard we were talking about, the 1,200 meters vineyard. It's it's a you said it right. It's a dream for a sommelier to be able to produce. I think when you have the chance to have all these grapes melted together, it's not easy. But I'm like tailoring like a suit on my palate because when I first arrived, I found Riesling and Gewürztraminers only, which Riesling is without any doubt my favorite grape variety, and probably Gewürztraminer is my less favorite grape variety because I don't like very aromatic wine, and so I decided to move to increase this vineyard with some of my favorite variety and with the idea of doing something which is slightly aromatic, very delicate, and very light in the palate. I have to say, all my wines, Mareneve is a good example, but all my wines, I imagine if I have to compare to athlete, I like to compare my wines to athletes. And I imagine my wine like marathonate. So my wines has to be very skinny, bones, nerves. If you want to go
Mhm.
very far, if you want to go far away in time and in kilometers, you have to be very very light. And I understand which model has been followed in the last 20, 30 years of wines like very concentrated, very powerful, a lot of alcohol, a lot of structure, extract. All these things reminds me to a 100 meters runner, which are fantastic if we have to drink a wine after 1 year, 2 years, which is fantastic if the runner has to run for 1 kilometer. But this heaviness, all this power, all these muscles, after a couple of years, it's killing you because it's the heaviness which doesn't allow you to go far. And I imagine my wines in the same way. So Mareneve is a very good example of this. No malolactic, no oak, no maceration, no extract, no sour maturation. I mean, I anticipate a little bit the Gewürztraminer because I don't like it. It's too aromatic in a full maturation. So I anticipate about 1 week the Gewürztraminer, and then I take together Riesling, Chenin, and Grecanico. And at last, I added from my second vintage the Caricante, which is the grape of Etna, and in this case, it comes still from the eastern slope. Now I planted it, and probably from next year, I'm gonna be able to have Mareneve from the single vineyard together.
That's okay. So you'll be able to have a single vineyard Mareneve from the Bronte vineyard or from the eastern slope?
From the Mareneve comes from the Bronte, the main vineyard, and just the Caricante from the eastern slope.
Okay.
Which is actually interesting because if you consider we have the name of the wine Mareneve, it's the name of a road which connect the eastern slope to the northern slope. It's called Mareneve, means sea and snow, because it starts in Milo, so facing the sea, goes up to the ski lift where you can ski on Etna, and then down to Lingua Glossa, which is the beginning of the northern slope. So I think this is also quite important to recall what you can find in the wine, which is a very freshness from the altitude and a saltiness from the volcanic soil.
What's also interesting, I think, is this choice of grape varieties, which I think you said you found on the vineyard already, the Riesling, the Gewürz, and the Chenin Blanc. Those are all great varieties, along with Caricante, with a very high acidity, which allows them to age and evolve in the bottle. Is that also what you're looking for? A white wine that can continue to develop and take on those tertiary aromas and flavors that only come with time, but which need that high acidity.
Absolutely, yes. It's a pleasure for me now to start opening my first vintages of Mareneve, which are 16, 17, and they start to show like the Riesling potential and TDN aroma, oil aroma. It's just what I had in my mind, and I'm very happy because they are still very young and they can really age. They're not inaccessible in the mouth. I mean, the palate is, you can drink Mareneve if it's young, refreshing and really saltiness. I would say yes. The idea is, as a sum, is to have wine you can drink without thinking too much.
Mm-hmm.
Which they have a complexity which is not loud. It's there. It will show in time. Doesn't need to be very cream. It's just there, and time will let you know how they can show. And I'm very happy about that.
Okay. Well, let's turn to your most iconic red wine. Would that be the Profumo di Vulcano, a wine that goes back to that first vineyard? Is that right?
Yes, it is right. We started from this single vineyard, half an hectare. So the production at the beginning was like 1,200 bottles, 1,500 bottles. Very small, very low yield because the vines are very old. After, in 2016, I bought a small, slightly bigger, but more or less the same size of another very ancient vineyard. So with the same age, sort of. So at the end, I have 1 hectare of very old vineyard, still in Feudo di Mezzo. It's a bit higher in quote because Feudo di Mezzo, it's one of the most known contrada in Etna. Is the biggest on the northern slope, and it goes actually from 600 to 680 meters. So I have the first original Profumo di Vulcano vineyard, the one of the butcher, which is 600 meters, and the second one, which is 680 meters, which allowed me to have differences in quote, which helps, especially in the alternances of the vintages.
Okay, and talk us through the wine. Tell us the sort of wine you're producing from Feudo di Mezzo, from the Profumo di Vulcano, because I know you also do a single Contrada, Rosso di Mezzo.
Yes, actually, I produced 3 Etna Rosso. So all the 3 wines are inside the appellation Etna. obviously not the white wine, which has all this variety, and the altitude also becomes a limit because we have DOC until 800 meters. So the idea, which is a little bit inspired by some old Piemontese, the idea is to melt together and make a harmony, a balance between different altitude and different soil in Etna. So my idea is to have 3 wines which represent mainly the age of the vineyard. So Etna Rosso is the youngest vineyard I have, which is 12 years old now, the main one. It's in Monte La Guardia, so it's right at the limit of the DOC. It's just below the 800 meters. And you have a very good freshness from this altitude. In reality, 2 plots are included in this Monte La Guardia. They come from Feudo di Mezzo. In Feudo di Mezzo, I have 5 vineyards. 2 of them, 2 very small, they go inside the Etna Rosso. One is for Feudo di Mezzo, is the single vineyard, and is the Contrada wine I do, the only Contrada wine I do, because it's in Contrada Feudo di Mezzo, and is a vineyard which is about 35 years old. So this is a sort of, it's probably considered old vines everywhere else, but in Sicily, and especially in Etna, we have older vines, so 35 is not considered very, very old. And then Profumo di Vulcano, which is a blend of those 2 very old vineyards. Actually, I have to say, in the last 2 years, I decided to have a little bit of the Monte La Guardia in the blend, because I think it's a sort of unconsciously, we start with Profumo di Vulcano. It's mainly a blend of the 2 very old vineyards in Passopisciaro, 600 and 680 meters. But I decided, I think unconsciously, to have a little part of the highest vineyard inside the DOC, which is the Monte La Guardia, where I do the Etna Rosso. It's important because for me, it gives a little bit more precision on the nose. And this is because the very old vineyards are quite chaotic. They have a lot of variety inside. It's not possible historically. They didn't have a pure Nerello Mascalese vineyard at the end of 1800, the beginning of 1900. The DOC Etna is from the 1960s. So you cannot you cannot have a vineyard which is inside a Lowe's then has been thought like 80 years later. So in the very old vineyard, you have you have mainly Nerello Mascalese, and you have also a little bit of Nerello Cappuccio, but you have also different variety, which are Grenache, that we call Alicante. Few percentage point is not a big quantity, but still gives a little bit of Mediterranean flavor to the wine. Another grape is called Ufrancisi, or what we would translate with French grapes, which is something similar but not exactly a Cabernet Franc. Another couple of percentage points. And then we still have some 20, 30, 40 plants of white grapes, which are included in the blend as much as possible. So they're just in a few vintage where the maturation of the 2, the white and the red, were very distant, like 2017 and 2012. All the other years, they have been vinified together.
So you harvest all these varieties together and vinify together, except in exceptional years.
Esatto. Esattamente, yes. And what was important for me to have this little part of the Monte La Guardia. Monte La Guardia, if you come and visit, you will see spectacular, whoever will come, spectacular olive trees, which is 800 years old. It's a clos, so it's a closed system. It's a microcosm. It's really 3 hectares, a wall all around, in 2/3 of which are connected to the forest, the pure forest. So it's a special place. And because the system is closed, we know the elements we have, the soil we have in Etna are sand, stone, and ashes. Everything is volcanic. So the higher part, by the rainfall, always leave a little bit of sand going down because of gravity. And the highest part today is nearly only stones. That's why that little parcel we decided to vinify by itself. And because I have a very similar yield to the very old vineyard. And so the idea was to have a little bit more precision because of this sort of chaotic blend of variety which the very old vineyard have, and at the same time without losing the power of the mouth which only the very old vineyard have.
Okay. So that's I think giving our listeners an indication of the precision in your wines, but also how terrain and altitude and age of vines has such an impact on the finished wines themselves. Federico, can we turn now to gastronomy and your wines? It's interesting that your vineyard was purchased from a butcher. Is the butcher still in Passopisciaro? And are there local dishes on from Etna that pair particularly with your wines, whether Mareneve or the red?
Yes, we have. This is my old work. My old job
Yes,
is
of course.
coming out all the time. Yes, and I'm glad because I think it's very important. About Mareneve, I really like the match with the vegetables, green vegetables like asparagus, zucchini, or everything is peas, everything made like a frittata, like omelette, everything could go on that side as well as fruit de mer. Mussels, clams, some crustacean, sorry. And that's, I think, the best way of enjoying Mareneve. For the reds, yes, the butcher is still there, and luckily, I think the black pig is just sort of very small but very fat pig
From the Nebrodi,
from the
Nebrodi Mountain.
Nebrodi. Exactly, they have a fantastic fat. It's and I think it's one of the best match because I keep these nerves. I keep the wine not with the very dry tannins, but still they are there, and I imagine my wine with food all the time. I cannot think of my wine without it because it's just the way I've been, imagining wine is at the table next to food and with a lot of drinkability. What I
I
look
guess
for
I
is,
guess as well, you're also able to imagine your wines not simply with the local foods of Etna or Eastern Sicily or even Sicily, but in a broader context of dining at a high level anywhere in the world. You want
yes,
wines that could sit on the table on those beautifully curated wine lists that used to be your job to look after.
yeah. I did an event last a couple of days ago, and they were like presenting with filetto alla Rossini, which is one of the most iconic gastronomy dish in the history, with foie gras, black truffle, and I think it
Cooked at
matched.
the table, quite flamboyant.
Yes, yes, yes. So I would say for me, food is very important. I don't, wine, of course, but I don't really like people who don't think food is important. And it's like a focus for me. It's so important. It's so rich of culture and technique and everything. It's like it's an important matter. We cannot deal with that.
Yeah, I think it is an important matter, and it's important for winemakers to be aware of how their wines are going to be enjoyed. People that are actually buying them, how they're going to appreciate them to their best. Federico, can our listeners visit you on Etna to find out more?
Yes,
Because I think that's the best way always to understand an area as complex as Etna, but also to understand the work and the philosophy that goes into a winery.
yes, it's very important. you see the difference when people reach the place and understand what clos it means, what sitting at a table, which is a 3.5 meter round table. It's important to understand the energy we have. I mean, I don't always live in Sicily. I have a wife and I travel a lot because my wife lives 1,300 kilometers away from my vineyard. So you can imagine it's not easy to handle this. But yes, definitely, if you have the chance to come and visit, and you understand a lot more, because something you cannot really express in words. The feeling when you go down to these olive trees and you stay there it's like the silence you have. The first house is 1 kilometer away. In the night you have a stars sky, which is unbelievable. So everything, we are just 40 minutes from Taormina. I mean, you enjoy a holiday in Taormina and you spend a couple of winery visit, really understanding. It's important. It would be for me has been. It is dangerous because you might end up as I did, but of course, is part of the game.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that you've certainly made me want to visit you and to reacquaint myself with other parts of Etna, because there's so much to see and so much to learn. I think one of the most exciting things you've highlighted here is that Etna is such an ancient land of vines, these old vines, but vines that have been there literally hundreds of years, in viticulture for thousands of years. But it's also a new and exciting wine region for wine lovers to discover, for those who maybe have been drinking wines from those curated wine lists in the best restaurants, but really don't know Etna yet. It's an area to come and discover. Fede, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, a really fascinating story of how you came into the world of wine from when you were 15 years old to working in those great restaurants, but now to growing grapes and making wonderful wines on the Volcano. So it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Mark. I wait for you and for your guest to have the chance to come and visit. Would be a pleasure to share my emotions and my wines with you.
Thank you very much. Non vedo l'ora. I hope to be able to get to Etna this coming year. Thank you again.
Ciao, ciao.
We hope today's episode of Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on the Italian Wine Podcast has transported you to somewhere special. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your pods. Likewise, you can visit us at italianwinepodcast.com. Until next time, chin chin.